How's it going, folks? I am Graham Jason Matthews. This is WrestleRant, and as the road to WWE SummerSlam rages on, we're breaking down every installment of the event as seen on the WWE Network right here on WrestleRant. And today we're breaking down the 1992 edition of SummerSlam, one of the best editions of SummerSlam of all time, as Vince McMahon said at the end of the show, but it did end up ringing true all these years later. But before we get started, though, I do want to say this. I forgot to mention this for whatever reason at the end of my 1991 SummerSlam review. The wedding between Macho Man and Elizabeth. I mean, it really wasn't like worth reviewing. It was your typical wedding, although it just didn't end in a brawl or anything. It was a great moment, an awesome way of going off the show. I just forgot to mention it because I just read the results off of Wikipedia. I watched the show a couple days before I do these reviews. And then I refresh my memory by reading off the results from Wikipedia, and that's how I kind of go about my reviews and whatnot. That's what I'm looking at right now. And of course, it's not going to list the wedding at the end of the results, so I completely forgot about that. So my apologies for neglecting the wedding made in heaven the match made in heaven rather, between Macho Man Randy Savage and Elizabeth from the conclusion of the 1991 SummerSlam. But nevertheless, this is SummerSlam 1992, emanating live, or not live rather, it must have been taped, from London, England. And it was a pretty good show from Wembley Stadium. I thought it was one of the best SummerSlams I've seen to date, if not the best SummerSlam up to this point from 1988 to 1992. I mean, McMahon at the end of the show, like I said before, said, and this very well might be the greatest SummerSlam of all time, which isn't saying much because that was like the fifth edition, the fifth installment. But, still, I think, it does ring true even all these years later. I think it is one of the most well-rounded and most entertaining SummerSlam events ever. I definitely thought that while watching this, and hopefully you do too, watching this show back on the WWE Network. But nevertheless, kicking off the show, a tag team match. The Legion of Doom taking on Money Inc. Nothing on the line here, just a typical tag team match. And a match I really enjoyed. I love the duo of Ted DiBiase and IRS. I thought Money Inc. was great. Ted DiBiase was one of my favorite characters of the 1980s and early 1990s. I thought he made for a great wrestler, a great manager, and a great gimmick on the whole. So I love Ted DiBiase, and whenever he's in action. The Legion of Doom could not get more over. Those guys were so freaking over with the audience. And it always seems like, and I'll talk about the Ultimate Warrior later on, his winning streak at this event, it always seems like the Legion of Doom are always on the winning end of every match they compete at SummerSlam. And, rightfully so. They were such a great tag team, and they were always over with the audience. And this was no exception. A really good match from these two teams, getting the most time out of any undercard match on the entire show, with the exception of the two title match main events for the WWE and Intercontinental titles, respectively, going about 15 minutes. But a very well-wrestled match, the Legion of Doom emerging victorious to kick off the show on a high note. So a great match between Legion of Doom and Money Inc. Up next, Virgil versus Nails. We had an interview with Virgil before the matchup, just basically talking about how he was going to put away Nails, how he had, wrestled in all these brawls, all these backstreet fights, or whatever the hell he was talking, all these street fights and parking lot brawls and all this other crap. And obviously, Virgil had to eat his words after being quickly decimated by Nails, one of the stupidest characters from the 1990s, an ex-convict, and that character obviously did not last long, but Virgil coming out with his generic-ass babyface music like I talked about my SummerSlam 91 review. Very strange, but yeah, Virgil, there was really nothing about him that screamed special. The guy was a good athlete and whatnot. I mean, he got over during the feud of Ted DiBiase because everyone wanted to see DiBiase get his comeuppance and see him get his ass kicked, but once Virgil was on his own, he was never really anything exciting, and that was kind of apparent during this matchup. A pretty glorified squash match in favor of Nails, who went over here, and that was about it. Up next, we had Shawn Michaels versus Rick Martel in a match where neither man could hit the other in the face, and it was a standard singles match. I thought they fought in a blindfold match. I'm thinking of another match with Rick Martel. But nevertheless, that was not an official rule. That was just something they agreed upon, where I wouldn't hit you in the face if you didn't hit me in the face. And that was kind of the mutual agreement between the two men going into this matchup, something that was set up via Sensational Sherri, who was the manager of Shawn Michaels at this period in time. 1992, of course, was the same year where Shawn Michaels broke out on his own as a single star, as a breakout heel, and he did a great job with the character. Rick Martel is very similar in that case. And for a match where I thought, unless I'm wrong here, there was no babyface in this match. Both Martel and Michaels were heel. In a match where, you have two heels pitting against each other, typically it does not work out that well because there's never really an incentive for the crowd to cheer for either guy. And for a match I thought I wouldn't enjoy, I ultimately did. I thought both these guys put together a really nice match. I mean, it was well wrestled and all. I think both guys, are great wrestlers, of course, but it was the notion that neither guy, given their similar narcissistic gimmicks, could punch the other in the face was what made it entertaining in the end. Sensational Sherri, although she was with Shawn Michaels, also kind of had a thing going for Rick Martel, who kind of flirted with Sensational Sherri throughout the matchup. So they kind of teased that towards the course of the contest as well. So she didn't want to see either guy punch the other in the face because they were both so gorgeous in her eyes. So she ultimately fainted when they broke that rule. All chaos ensued, and they were punching each other back and forth. And I think it was Michaels who ultimately took her out of the arena. It might have been Rick Martel, but there was a lot of fighting going on over Sensational Sherri over the course of this contest. But it made for a really fun match. Again, not like the greatest Matt instant classic, Matt classic of all time. That came during the main event, in my opinion. But still, for a fun little enjoyable matchup with a cool little stipulation that was kind of fitting of both guys' gimmicks, I liked it for what it was, and especially for a match that I thought I wouldn't enjoy considering both guys were heel. And it did set up a little something for later down the line between Michaels and Rick Martel and who would win over Sensational Sherri. I mean, granted, the match ended in a double countout, saving the rematch for a later date. So again, the match really wasn't about the match more so than it was about the gimmicks of both guys and protecting both guys and the war over Sensational Sherri, so to speak. So I thought it was fun for what it was, and I enjoyed it. Up next, the WWF Tag Team titles. The Natural Disasters taking on the Beverly Brothers. The Natural Disasters were the defending tag team champions in this contest. Not as good as the opener. I thought Legion of Doom versus Money Inc. was better, so it's kind of weird that was the non-title match and this was the championship match. But it was still good for what it was. I didn't hate it or anything like that. Just a pretty standard tag team match. In the end, the Natural Disasters emerging victorious, Earthquake and Typhoon, to retain their WWF Tag Team titles. So a pretty straightforward tag team match. Nothing all that special about it, but nothing too bad either. Up next, we had Crush versus Repo Man. And once again, like Nails versus Virgil. A very random matchup that was kind of designed to put over Crush. Repo Man, another goofy gimmick from the 1990s that never really had much staying power, just kind of a stupid character. Crush, though, although I did not and still don't know much about him, he was a very impressive physical specimen. The guy looked like he had it all, like they were trying to groom him to be, maybe not the next Hulk Hogan, but trying to groom him to be a big star on the horizon. And, this is pretty much an impressive outing for him only. Repo Man was, just did the job for Crush, and that was about it. The match shouldn't have gone as long as it did, going about almost 6 minutes. I would have been happier had it gone like maybe 2 or 3. The 6 minutes kind of felt kind of overstayed its welcome, but it did what was successful in its design and putting over Crush and furthering his momentum in this win over Repo Man. So it was successful in that aspect. Up next for the WWF Championship, a 30-minute classic in my eyes between the champion Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior. Now, I did enjoy their previous match at WrestleMania 7 more. I thought that match was a little bit better. Was it WrestleMania 7? I believe, yeah, because WrestleMania 6, Warrior beat Hogan for the belt. 7 was when it must have happened, but I love that match more, if only because it felt there was more drama. In this match, you had both guys as baby faces and kind of inject some heel flavor into it. They had Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect pretending to pit one guy against the other and pretending that they were in cahoots. One guy was in cahoots against the other, in cahoots with Perfect and Flair. So you had that little story going on, and there was a lot of interference in like the second half of this matchup with Flair and Perfect, kind of teasing, was Savage siding with them or was Warrior siding with them, and so it was a nice little story, and I thought the match itself was very good. I mean, a lot of people have seen reviews of the match say it was boring. I didn't like it. I thought it was, it wasn't a great match. I really enjoyed it. Maybe just because I'm a huge fan of both the Warrior and the Macho Man, and as I mentioned before, it was not as good as their match from WrestleMania, but for what it was, though, could it have been shorter? Maybe, especially for a match involving the Ultimate Warrior, who was very much limited. But when he had the right opponent, when he had the right opponent, and my Canadian accent came out that for a second. I don't know why. I'm not even Canadian. But yeah, when he had the right opponent, he could have a great match. And I thought Randy Savage was that guy, along with Hulk Hogan, the best opponent that Warrior ever had in WWE. And I thought this was a very enjoyable match. Both guys hitting their power moves. They could have slowed down some of the near falls, but for the most part, though, the crowd was on the edge of their seat for every near fall. Very suspenseful. Both guys hitting their finishers. It was very evenly matched throughout the entire match, and it looked like either guy could come out victorious with that WWF Championship. And it came out to a very lackluster finish, in my opinion. Savage ultimately got himself counted out. Not intentionally, just in brawling with Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair, giving Warrior the victory but not the championship. And I mean, it looked like they were setting up for a rematch, and maybe they did do a rematch on an episode of Superstars. I doubt it. But we never really did get that rematch between Warrior and Savage for the championship. I mean, this was the rematch, from the WrestleMania match from a year and a half earlier, but we never got that title rematch between Warrior and Savage, to my memory. Maybe I'm wrong there, but all I know is that Ric Flair ultimately beat Savage for that championship about a month later on an episode, some maybe house show or something, some house show or whatever, and Ric Flair won back that title. So we never ultimately got that rematch between Warrior and Savage, but still, though, like I said, really enjoyed this match. I thought they made the most of the time they were given. And unlike, the predecessor, the Crush versus Repo Man match, this match in many eyes may have gone a little bit longer than it should have, but still, I enjoyed it. I'm a huge fan of both guys. They delivered, had a great, a big fight feel contest that captured that feel perfectly. I was not a fan of the finish, but I can understand why they did it to further the feud between both guys and keep that championship on Savage, while at the same time protecting the Ultimate Warrior. Now, with that being said, like I said earlier with the Legion of Doom, it feels like to me that the Ultimate Warrior was, maybe I'm wrong here, had the most impressive winning streak of anyone in SummerSlam history. For the matches he competed in, not just 1 or 2, going 1 or 2-0. At SummerSlam, he went 5-0. He won at 1988 when he won the Intercontinental Championship for the first time in that 30-second squash against Honky Tonk Man. The following year, he won back the belt from Rick Rude at SummerSlam. The following year, once again facing Rick Rude in a steel cage match for the WWE Championship and winning. In 1991, beating Sergeant Slaughter and his minions in that 2-on-3 handicap match alongside Hulk Hogan in the main event of SummerSlam 91. Although he got fired that night, he still won that match technically. And then on this show, although he did not win the championship, he still technically won the match and via countout. So going 5-0 at SummerSlam, I don't believe he ever wrestled a match at SummerSlam again, because he was gone from the company shortly after this event, only to come back in 1996, but he was gone before SummerSlam came around. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe more people have had matches at SummerSlam and had more of an impressive win streak. It's not like he had 30 matches, close to 30 matches like The Undertaker at WrestleMania, but still, 5-0 is a pretty impressive number considering the amount of matches he had at the event. Up next, we had The Undertaker taking on Kamala in a 3-minute match. I'm glad it went as short as it did. It was not a good match at all. Kamala, while a character, was not a great wrestler, and this was not a great match at all. But and I'm glad they kept it, pretty short and sweet. Undertaker going over via disqualification after Kamala got himself disqualified. So, now, unlike the previous match with the WWE title on the line, I didn't think the non-finish with the DQ finish was that disappointing, because I understand they probably wanted to protect Kamala. They didn't want to have him get pinned. Whatever. I will say, though, although the match wasn't anything of note, it was just kind of a pretty stupid match, kind of a pointless match. Undertaker's entrance was pretty great, coming out in the casket, which was great, a really cool entrance and a great spectacle at SummerSlam. But other than that, though, this is pretty much an afterthought of a match, serving as a nice little buffer between the WWE title match and the main event for the Intercontinental Championship, and I'll get to more about that in a second. But yeah, served its purpose, gave Undertaker a win, didn't really care for it, not a good match, but at least it didn't overstay its welcome, so I can't say that much about it. And then we get to the main event for the Intercontinental Championship, the British Bulldog contending for the gold against Bret Hart, and arguably one of the greatest wrestling matches in SummerSlam history, and rightfully so, among many fans, considered to be one of the greatest wrestling matches in the history of the event. But not only that, in WWE history. You had every single thing going into this. You had the story. It's not like it was only, just a great match. It wasn't only an instant classic in the ring. They had the story going. The environment was perfect. It reminded me a lot, not in terms of the story told, but reminded me a lot of all the factors, just in terms of all the factors being there, of my favorite match of all time, CM Punk, John Cena, Money in the Bank 2011 in Chicago, when Punk walked out in front of his hometown followers, his faithful followers in Chicago, as the new WWE champion. this match reminded me so much of that, because you had the hometown crowd for British Bulldog. I mean, the commentators tried to tell the story that Bret Hart was also very much beloved in England. And I mean, he had his, fans and whatnot, but when he came down the ring, he was pretty much booed, and it was wise of him to play the heel to British Bulldog as the babyface, because technically, while both guys were babyface, Bret Hart, played the heel to British Bulldog's, hometown conquering hero, homecoming hero character in this matchup. So I think that was very fitting. And not only the hometown aspect of it for the British Bulldog, but also you had the story being told here. I mean, not the same exact story, but the story being told going into this event was there. I mean, you had Bret Hart and his stepbrother, the British Bulldog, or a family member of his, two very close guys. You had Diana Smith at ringside, who they showed various close-ups throughout the night. Her talking about how they were very competitive with one another throughout their entire lives, and they always wanted to top the other, and British Bulldog cutting a great promo earlier on in the night saying, I love you, brother, but when we get in that ring, I don't know you, I've never met you before in my life, and I'm taking home that Intercontinental Championship. And Bret Hart doing much the same thing, also cutting a heel-esque promo during his interview. Like I said before, though, although he was the perennial babyface during this period in time, he was still the portrayed as the heel in this contest, as he should have been, since British Bulldog they should have known was going to be the more over of the two in his hometown of his home turf of England in this contest. But yeah, from a wrestling standpoint, a very, very good match. A lot of near falls, a lot of submission close calls down the stretch, and a lot of great, back and forth action throughout the entire contest. British Bulldog, very much the fan favorite in this contest. Bret Hart put him over in a huge way, and they made that Intercontinental Championship feel like the most prestigious prize in the business. And it's a shame that title doesn't mean the same thing that it does now as it did then. But still, I mean, the fact this title match, main evented the show at all was a huge testament to how much they saw that title, meaning something, how much they saw in that title, how much they saw in Bret Hart and British Bulldog. Bret Hart was not yet the main event caliber wrestler that he would soon, become, but it was shortly thereafter that I believe he won his first WWE Championship. And this, losing the title here to British Bulldog, putting him over in a huge way, was a win-win situation. It gave British Bulldog a major victory on his home turf of England. To the roar of the crowd, that place exploded when he got the 1-2-3 and rolled up Bret Hart for the victory. So giving British Bulldog that awesome title win, a huge, memorable moment, if not the most memorable moment in SummerSlam history, thus allowing Bret Hart to move on to the main event scene and contend for that WWE Championship, which he was ready for. He was definitely ready for the main event scene by that period in time. So I thought it was a win-win situation for both guys. But never again will you see, likely, never say never, I guess, but it's, almost unfathomable to think that the Intercontinental Championship would main event a WWE pay-per-view. Granted, in 2015 with the WWE Network era and all these other matches, 10 years ago, you would have never seen Dean Ambrose and Bray Wyatt main event at pay-per-view, or Rollins and Ambrose. They probably would have put John Cena in there instead. Then why didn't they do the same thing? When during Punk's reign as WWE champion, maybe they would have put him in the main event as WWE champion had they had the WWE Network around then. It's not really about selling people on the pay-per-view. Much it is on selling people on the WWE Network. It's a little bit different. But like I was saying before, though, it's just simply unfathomable in 2015 to think that an Intercontinental Championship match would main event a WWE pay-per-view. And, still, I think it made for it a great moment and made that title, like I said before, feel like the most prestigious prize in the business. Put Bulldog over in a huge way. I'm very sad that he, ultimately passed, but they never really capitalized on the momentum he had on this show. Bret Hart would, of course, go on to do bigger and better things in WWE, but British Bulldog could have been WWE's first British-born WWE champion had they continued on the right course with him. A great character, an amazing wrestler, and they never really had him reach his full potential for whatever reason with the steroids going on and all the controversy and the Montreal Screwjob and everything else going on in that period in time. It's a shame he never really ultimately reached his full potential in WWE. But still, for what this was, though, an amazing moment, an amazing match, in the best way of going off the show. And like I said before, I'm very much surprised they went with it. They made the right decision, and they did not go with the Icon versus Icon match and Warrior and Savage. in the main event because, more often than not, 9.9 times out of 10 would they have the WWE title match close the show. But in this case, they had the IC title match close the show because it really, made sense within the story that they were trying to tell with both guys, and it was the right decision to make in the end. So I thought it was great. A fantastic way of closing out SummerSlam 1992. So on the whole, I love this show. I mean, I'm biased in the sense that, I've talked about this here before in video blogs on the channel and whatnot, just about being very pro-England. The England crowds in wrestling, even in recent years, have been so awesome. I'm always excited to see when Raw goes over to England because they're always such a great crowd. And, you go back 20, 25 years ago, back to this pay-per-view, that was no exception even then. These guys were rowdy, very much energetic, and invested in the action, engaged in all the storylines and all the matches. And on the whole, I thought there were a lot of great matches and made for a very entertaining event on the whole. You had an electric atmosphere, a lot of noteworthy moments, a great way of going out the show with a new Intercontinental Champion being crowned, new World Tag Team Champions being crowned, a great WWE title match, in my opinion, brief Undertaker match, and a very fun match in the undercard between Shawn Michaels and Rick Martel, and a great opener, too, between Legion of Doom. Not new Tag Team Champions crown. That was the year previous. I'm thinking of the Legion of Doom winning, and a great opener between the Legion of Doom and Money Inc. in the opening slot of the show. So like I said, all in all, a very, very good show. Among the best of all time? I would say so. Definitely in the top 5, if not the top 3, if not number 1. I still have to watch the rest of these SummerSlam pay-per-views to truly determine which was the best SummerSlam of all time, in my opinion. It's there's a lot of SummerSlam, so it's going to be hard to tell. But still, so far from 1988 to 1992, of the past 5 SummerSlams, there's only been one snoozer, and I think that was 1990. But in the last 5-6 years of these 5 SummerSlams, I would certainly say this one was the best. So needless to say, go out and check out this pay-per-view on the WWE Network. Go out of your way to check it out. It's an amazing event. You will not regret it. Reliving these awesome matches and moments from SummerSlam 1992. That's going to do it for my review of SummerSlam 1992 as seen on the WWE Network. I appreciate the support. You guys can follow me on Twitter at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. I'll be back on Tuesday with my full in-depth analysis of SummerSlam 1993. So in the meantime, folks, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you guys down the road.